everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming to you live from the stacks. I'm at work and I'm preparing for a few presentations, and a lot of them are on the Victorian theme. So I thought I'd bring out some highlights from my collection that are specifically about the Victorian era. And I thought, since on BookTube Victober's coming up, it might be fun to just show you some of them too. So I'm taking you to work with me, and I guess this counts as public outreach too. Now, one thing I'm going to warn you about is there might be some fan noises that you hear in the background sometimes, and that's just because of the ventilation in here, and that's just in a few clips. I am going to timestamp this video as much as I can so that you can only watch the things that interest you if you're not here for the whole ride. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. If you like this, let me know, and let me know if you want to see any other kind of videos of this kind, and if you have any specific requests. Okay, so let's just start showcasing some things. So I'm going to start with these few rows. So these are called yellowbacks, and you'll be able to identify them by the sort of chromoxylography used to make the covers. They're very cheaply made, and it's what I usually describe to students as the Victorian equivalent of an airport book. And the greatest thing about these, which is why I love them so much, is that they're filled with ads. And we're talking Victorian ads, right? So you have a good insight into some of the life that people were living back then, and some of the stuff that was important to them or marketable to them. And we'll see a lot more of that as we progress. And I'd like to take a look at one particular book that I love in this collection, and that is this one over here by Captain Marryat's daughter. So Frederick Marryat wrote The Children of the New Forest, and he was a captain out at sea. And his daughter, Florence, she wrote this book, which was a bestseller of its day. So basically, she held a bunch of seances with Victorians, and I'm gonna read a nonfiction book about that during Occult Detective October. That's more about the whole phenomenon, but this is an authentic Victorian piece from that time period, and it's filled with ads. I mean, I imagine that this book was not only amazing for the fact that it was cheap, but it's kind of extraordinary to think that celebrities of the time would be featured in this as having attended seances. So I would be very curious as a Victorian to read this and to learn a little bit about what people saw or heard during this seance. Staying on the topic of yellow, over here we have all 13 volumes of the Yellow Book. It didn't last very long. It was a very short-lived quarterly serialization. It was kind of highbrow, and it featured writers like Yeats in it, and a lot of poets and the elite literary of the late Victorian period. I think it started in 1891. One of its co-founders was Beardsley, who is associated with not only this art movement of the time that was heavily inspired by the French movement, but he was also involved with creating some artwork for the posters of Oscar Wilde. They're indicative of a late Victorian stage, so I really do enjoy these, and the artwork is truly phenomenal. If you flip through it, you have the poetry, as I discussed. These are so much more modern looking than anything else from the Victorian period, so it's really nice to see. Not a lot of writing. It seems minimal in presentation, but this would have been like the Victorian equivalent of the New Yorker, I think. Okay, so this is volume 1 of 2 volumes of Jane Austen from 1844. So this would be a Victorian printing of a Jane Austen. Definitely not first edition or anything like that. But even though the cover is falling apart, and I'm gonna give this over to our bookbinder in a sec to repair, I do really like this colored illustration here because it's so beautiful. It's a little bit shiny and gold. I don't know if it really transfers through on this camera, but I really like this. And again, it's 2 little volumes. I only pulled out volume 1. The second one has the same illustration, but I just thought you should see a teeny tiny Jane Austen from the Victorian period. Beeton was a pretty big printer or publisher, and he printed the very first Sherlock Holmes, A Study in Scarlet. And I spoke about this at length during my visit to the special collection of the Sherlock Holmes archive in Toronto. So I'm going to link that video somewhere. In my collection, I have at least 2 original serialized Christmas Beetons, although this does not include Sherlock Holmes. It's a different one, but you get an idea for the time and the vibe. And then afterwards, Beeton became a little bit more famous for publishing his wife. Enter Lady Beeton's Household Management. So this is newly bound. It's not an original binding, but it's from 1861. Very Victorian, very chonky. It's compiling a lot of her household advice. And what I love about this printing is that you have a lot of colors inside as well. So I'm going to just take a moment and put some of the weighted snake on this so you can see it wide open. So here you can see one of the colored plates, and quite literally both plate and plate because it's about cooking. So Lady Beeton was kind of the Martha Stewart of her day, I guess, where she would tell people how to manage their household and how to cook and give them recipes. And even though recipes had been created before and even published, she kind of made it much more popular. Some people have even claimed that she plagiarized some of her recipes, but I think even the idea of copyright was relatively new at the time. And if you were a young woman who didn't have, a mom or older sisters or someone to pass down this information, you would really need somebody to share this with you. This is the official title page for this. And my favorite is kind of seeing all of the requirements to manage a full household. So we're talking full Downton Abbey here, okay? Because you need a valet and a housekeeper and all kinds of household staff. So it was aimed a bit more at upper class citizens, I guess. But, it's still beneficial. And I have seen some YouTubers who browsed this and tried to adapt it to a present day woman or what we can learn from Lady Beeton now. I just really wanted to show you the original Victorian. Now, another thing I wanted to show you was this Household Stories by the brothers Grimm. So this was translated from the German by Lucy Crane, and the illustrations inside are done by Walter Crane. Crane is famously known for creating children's toy books, and we'll take a look at those in just a second. But one of the reasons I love to pull this book out is because as you flip through it, you'll see the woodcuts, right, and the beautiful illustrations. It is foxing a little bit. A lot of the Victorian books are, because the paper was done by machine and the materials are not as pure. If you want to know more about foxing, I'll link that video somewhere. But what I love about this one is that you can see the relationship between translation, woodcuts, and print history by looking at a very funny mistake. So on page 40 is a story called The Wolf and the Seven Goslings. Now you'll see that there they are, 7 goslings. And this story was slightly mistranslated by Lucy Crane. The title should have been 7 Goats, right? A lot of stories have been retold with the goats. I know in Romania we have the wolf and the 3 goats, or 3 baby goats. And Walter Crane didn't really question this very much, so he just went ahead and made the 7 goslings. So here we have his cut, and this is what would have been used here to be printed. We have a full drawer of the illustrations or the cuts that match this particular book. And the funny part is that if you read through the story, there are multiple scenes where the goslings are bleating and they have hoofs. And it's because the story doesn't work because it's about goats. But this little tiny error is kind of captured in the illustration and the title. So I mentioned Walter Crane earlier with the Grimm's book, And this is what a toy book would have looked like. Now, these were in color, and they were very impressive. Like, look at the detail on this. This does kind of remind me of that Weird Tales magazine I showed recently with the painting. And these were kind of solitary books. Like, this one is bound to have multiples in them, but they were all in color, and often they were offered up with a toy, which is why they're called toy books. Now, children's literature as a whole had not solidified yet, right? It was still in its early stages, though you did have people like Lewis Carroll around, but I do really enjoy these. They're so whimsical and fun. So they're kind of more based on nursery rhymes rather than full-on stories, and there's a lot of jokes. You can look at many more afterwards if you want, if this is a favorite of yours. I'm a pretty big fan of artifacts that kind of go with the books that aren't officially books. So this little beautiful box that's wooden is a watercolor box, Victorian watercolors. And I was able to find the catalog online, and this came from a store that was located very close to William Morris's house. Now, while not all of these cakes are still intact, and that's what these are called, the majority of them have the writing on them of the color that they are. So this is yellow ochre, and we do have this one as well that has East Asian characters on them. And then the labels also indicate the colors. And then you have a crest on the other side, which is not visible on most of them because this has been partially used. But what I love to see as well is that beneath all this, sorry, it's pretty fragile. Beneath it all is a porcelain type of palette. So now, if you were to get a watercolor box, it's all plastic, isn't it? I remember going to one museum in New York. I think it was the Morgan, and they had this exhibit with all of Charlotte Bronte's things. And I remember seeing her watercolor box there and being kind of struck by how beautiful and high quality it was. Now, this panoramic view of London is also from the 1800s, and it was still around the time of photography having been invented, but it wasn't widely available. So if you wanted a view of London and you were traveling and you wanted to show it to your friends, you probably would have been better off with one of these. Now, this is really, really long. So while I open it, you're going to see that it takes some work. I'm going to have to put my phone down, open it, and then show you a little bit. But it's so long that it takes me forever to roll it back up. So I'm only going to show you a portion of this. So here you have a metal plate of London. So as you go through this, it just keeps rolling and rolling, and it goes on for, I don't know, like 6 or 7 feet. And it's pretty difficult to roll back up. So I'm just gonna show you this much and then roll it back. Roll it is by twisting these ends. I just don't want to risk damaging it. But what's impressive is that each section is made with a metal plate, and then you'd have them all kind of glued together so that it keeps this long scroll going. Now, a lot of Victorian books that I have in my collection are nature books. I'm gonna show you a few. But there were a lot of kind of micro histories or micro focused ones. So this one's about seaweeds. And again, they were filled with some ads at the front and the back. But inside you would have descriptions, natural history, very detailed, and the occasional illustration. Sometimes they were all in black and white, and occasionally you'd have colored ones like these ones. Really, really enjoyable. I would totally be doing this if I was a Victorian. And then this one's on microscopy. And I have a lot on the microscope. This one's just the sturdiest, so I bring it out the most. Some of them are a bit flimsy, but this one has some extraordinary illustrations, both in black and white and in color. So here is what you would see: wings under the microscope or certain details. So this is from a moth, or at least that's what it says. And it does have some protection, though again, they are foxing, so Not great. Now we have a ton of great exhibition things. So this took place at the Crystal Palace, which has burned down since. And there's a lot of information on the Great Exhibition. You don't have to hear it all from me. But we do have a lot of the catalogs from the time period. So a lot of the items that would have been shown off during the Great Exhibition. So this is a very interesting kind of band sort of book that opens out. It's got a lot of comics in it. I find this to be very, very cool. And we have some just, pure books, like cover to cover, the same way you would find in the regular collection. But we also have some standout pieces. This, by the way, was the view from the gardens around the Crystal Palace. So here it is in the background, and you can see it a bit more up close here. It's giant. Books like these ones would have a lot of illustrations showing different angles of the outside of the Crystal Palace and then some of the wonders inside. And it was highly attended because it went on for a while, and it had wonders from all around the world. Canada's featured in here a lot, so I like that. It's pretty extraordinary, telescopic. So this opens up kind of like this, and then you're supposed to look through that little hole, and it's supposed to show you a three-dimensional view, as if you were at the Crystal Palace yourself. So let me just try to set it up. Okay, so here's the view from the top. And then this is if we were looking through what you would be able to see. Nothing. No. Can I zoom in? Let me see. I mean, you can kind of get the gist, but it's better in person, obviously. So right now I have a student working on an exhibition on the Great Exhibition. So it's really fun to watch them at work. Okay, speaking of William Morris, this is an authentic Kelmscott press, and we have a few Kelmscotts. I'm going to show you a little clip here of some of the ones on the shelf. And I like to pull these out to see just the sort of elegance of a William Morris Kelmscott book. Now, because these are authentic, we also have some rough drafts done in the end pages by William Morris himself. This is as he was practicing his initials for the press. And it also is inscribed because it was dedicated to Cockerell, or Sidney Cockerell, who was the museum curator. And William Morris, in case you don't know, is the Victorian patron of the arts. He had a private press in his house, which was this one. And he wanted to do everything sort of elegantly. He wanted to keep everything very highbrow, and everything was a bit more spread out, a bit more simplistic. And he had two typefaces that he used most, which was the Golden type and Troy. And then later on, the type was given to Chiswick Press. And this Kelmscott didn't last too long. I'm going to show you another one right now. Again, this one too has an exercise in watercolor, I want to say. I'm not sure. It says here it's an original design. And as you, like, these things are kind of detaching too over time. This one's very small. You can see my hand looks massive. And you have, again, the same sort of simplistic, not over the top, crazy illustration like we saw in the other books. This also came to us from a Canadian typographer, Carl Dare, who got it from England, from Chiswick Press. So a big kind of highlight that I like to point out, which seems to be on the label, is that it belonged at one time to the Chiswick Press in England, and William Morris may have used this press. Obviously, that's a little bit of a stretch. I hope it's not an exaggeration, but it's pretty exciting. I hope it's true. Morris also made a lot of textiles. So here we have an authentic Victorian textile done by Morris, and you can see errors because these are not done by machines, not everything is perfect. Some things do kind of bleed, and You see that there's human involvement in the production of this textile. Okay, so let's look at the ultimate Victorian, Charles Dickens. We all know that he's famously serialized, but I always envisioned it before as being a double or triple decker kind of volume book, right? I did not envision it as kind of individual little pamphlets like this. So when we say that he was serialized, he was published in little chunks of 4 chapters at a time. So this is Little Dorrit, and you have, the main text of the 4 chapters, and then you have, because it's a serialized thing, a lot of Victorian ads. The Victorian ads are just as cool as the Weird Tales ads. You get a lot of, soap companies, encyclopedias, barber shops, cobblers, and all the other things you can do. One of my favorites of this is an ad for a Shakespeare play that was happening at the time. And the first one also has more illustrations of Little Dorrit itself, like the contents of the book. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Then there's the original plate from Fizz himself. This is a steel plate, and I know it says copper plate, but I've been told this is steel. Okay, so here's the illustration after it's printed, and then the certificate of authenticity, I guess. And yeah, the plate has a lot of fingerprints on it. Just have a nice velvety enclosure here that I really like. The last thing I want to show you is the statistical chart of the Great Exhibition. So here we have the Crystal Palace again, and beautiful woodcut. But if you zoom out, okay, first, this is massive. You got all of the stats of, funds and attendance and who came in which month, and I'm not even sure how this was calculated and then printed, but it's extraordinary to have this as a print. It's pretty cool. Okay, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see, if you have any specific requests. I have almost anything and everything in this very eclectic collection, and I can also address some specific questions. So yeah, let me know what you think, what you'd like to see more of. Does this even interest you? Like, I don't even know. Do people want to see videos from the stacks? I don't know. So yeah, I will see you in a future video very soon. Bye!